Hey, after again another long time, I'm back to hopefully getting some more videos done. Um, so we're going to continue on the bar thing. I have some changes to my development environment and things that I'll talk about in future videos. But our bar project kind of stays the same. I do have one additional thing here for anybody using NixOS. There is a flake file with this now, and I do have this pushed up to a repository, so I will try to remember to link that in the description. Should be down there. And today we are going to pick up where we left off, and we're just going to try to get one module done and working, which is the clock module. So let's get back into it here. And I am in Nix now, so I do need to do this to get myself into my development environment. All right. All right, so let's go to main here. And I'm not going to review all the code as I did in the last video. Nothing has changed here, so we are in the same spot we left off. But we will run it just to remember what it looks like for now. Before we get working on this clock thing, we'll probably want to clean up our config. Alright, so let's run it. So in Vim, I have a shortcut now. I can push space RR to run a Rust project. It just does cargo run. So you can see it down at the bottom of the screen there. That's where we left off, where we had set up the spacers and all the different modules and configured them, but none of our modules are really doing anything yet other than showing the name of the module. So today we're going to get the clock module working, and that'll be our first module we'll get knocked out. So we want this clock module working, showing the time, being as configurable as possible. So we'll work on that. So first thing I want to do is we're going to change our config to only show the clock. And I want to show the clock on the right, so I can just do spacer clock, and that'll make a spacer that takes up all this room here and just shoves that clock over to the right. So with that done, I'll save that and run it again, and there we have our clock only over to the right there. So let's get this clock working. For this one, we are going to basically be using a built-in library, well, not built-in library, but a Rust library called Chrono to show the time. A lot of our other modules we're going to be shelling out to get information, but this one we can do right within Rust to get the local time and show it. So we're going to need to do that in our clock. The other thing we're going to need to do in our clock is our clock needs to update every second. So we're going to have to start a timer as well that will update our clock every second or every configurable amount of time. But every so often, the clock needs to be redrawn with a new time. All right, so let me get out my little reference one here. And we will talk through the changes we're going to make to get that to happen. So first thing we're going to do is add some configuration here. So right now, our config file just has a list of modules. So we just have that module array where we put the list of modules we wanted, and it was laying them out in order. So we're going to add a new thing here. And we're going to add this for every one of these modules, but we're going to make a section for configuring the clock. So in other words, what we want is that in our config, we'd set up our modules like that, and then down under that, we would have something like clock config, or just maybe just clock. And let me disable Copilot here. And then under clock, we'd have format, and we'd set our format using a time format string. whatever. This is just the format that Rust uses internally. Well, you can look that up. We'll talk a little bit about it later. But this would show, for example, the something like what I have up above there on the bar, on my actual bar, with AM and PM there. And then we want to be able to configure something like this, where we can say the update interval in milliseconds is 500, and this would tell it we want the time displayed like this, and we want to update every 500 seconds. All right, so I think that's just what I want it to look like. So let's get into how to update our config to read that. So we have that clock section, so we're going to make a new structure to store clock config, and it's going to have these two properties, format and update interval. So I'm going to go up here to where we have our config, and I think we'll put it right under here, and we'll make a struct called clock config, and we will put a thing called format here. We're going to need to make this public format, and we're going to make this optional because they might not configure this and just want the default. So we're going to kind of, at this point, make all these properties optional, so they'll fall back to some default. Okay, and then this update interval milliseconds is going to be an option of U64, so they can put a really big number in there. All right, so we'll save that. And we're going to put some stuff on here that we're going to need for derives. We're basically going to need everything that we have up there in config, so we can just copy that one. And that is, we need it to be serializable, deserializable. We'd like it to be debug. And we are going to take one thing out of here, which is default. And I'm going to put a different one in here, which we'll get into why later. A clone. So I do want to be able to clone this config. We're not going to put default there. We are going to implement default, but we're going to do it manually. Okay, so now that we have our clock config defined, we are just going to add that to our config. So we're going to call it clock under config, and we're going to say the type of that is clock config. And that will, okay, we do need to implement default here, so we'll get that done. All right, so this shape though is right. So we have a thing called clock there under config, and then in the actual clock object we have format and update interval, and that'll reflect this structure here, so we're in good shape. We just need to implement default here, so we're going to implement default for clock config. Like I said, we're not deriving that, we're going to do that manually because we want to put some specific defaults on this. Alright, so we are just going to implement this default function that returns a self, so it returns a clock config, and we're going to have it return a clock config with a format of some, and we'll figure out what to put here in a second, and we'll just call toString on it. Okay, so this will be our default format, and then we're going to have a default update interval milliseconds, and that's going to be some as well. And we'll say by default we update every second. All right, so now we've implemented a default there. We do need to put, sorry, I just bumped the microphone there. We do need to put something in here for our default format. So I'm going to put y d. All right, so year, month, day, and then hour, minute, And we'll do second there. Okay. So that is going to be our default format string. So our config is all updated now. So now it should be reading this config. It won't do anything yet, but we have that in the config now, ready for us to use when we go implement the clock module. So let's make sure that all works. So I'm going to run this project. So let's just cargo run. And it ran okay, it built okay, it ran okay, so things seem alright. Alright. So with that done, let's go fix up our clock module and make it work. Now that we have our config all done, we put in a config and we implemented it and gave it some nice defaults for people that don't specify that. So everything else we need to do is going to be over here in ClockRS. And let's see what we need to do. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is make this, instead of saying clock, so right now it says clock, we're going to make it show, show the actual time. So we already have a label here and we just put the word clock on it. So let's, I think let's start off just getting the date time in here. So to do this, we are going to need a new crate, and this is chrono. So I am going to cargo add chrono. Okay. And then what we're going to do is we're going to have the show local, so chrono local, actually, chrono local now that format. And we're going to format this. Oh. Sometimes I accidentally push a number before something here. All right. And then I think we are going to, let's see here. Okay, let's look at what this format is. Okay, this is a delayed format, so we are going to need to do some other things here. We are going to need to convert it to a string to get it to go ahead and format. And then we're going to use as string to get a slice of that. So now we should be good. The only thing here is this wants a option, so I'm going to do sometime. And that should get us there. Just going to inline this. We can actually use a code action to do that. Okay. All right. So after all that, what we're doing is instead of putting setting the label to have the new argument get a some string, we're going to call chrono local now format toString as string. ToString to get it to format and as string to get the slice. All right, now we do need to fill the format in here. Now we're going to get this from the config. So we will do that eventually, but right now let's just copy this one. And let's see what that looks like. All right, so the format of the code probably looks a little bit nicer and more readable here. So let's take a look. And now it's showing a time down there. The only problem we have left is this this time is never going to update. It's just going to kind of sit there, so we do need to add something to update the time. And we do want to do a couple other things here in terms of adding some CSS styles, well, some classes here so that people can individually kind of style the clock without having to affect the other elements. So right now, all of our modules have this bar module thing on it. So all we're going to do is add to this a more specific, it's still going to have the bar module class so that they can apply classes to bar module and affect all of them. We're going to specifically say this is clock module as well. So now it has both classes. They can style bar module, which all of these have added, so it'll affect all of them, or they can style clock module, which will just affect this one. Okay, so our config. So right now, if you remember, all of these modules are being passed the whole config. We actually just want to pull out just the clock config. So I am going to make a variable here called clock config and set that equal to config. Well, let's see here. I believe I made that optional. And we do want it to be optional. So they don't have to configure this at all. They can omit the whole config. So they could have a config file that just doesn't do this at all, and it'll still work. It'll just assume defaults. So we did want to make that whole clock property optional, which is what I did there. Just made that optional. All right, so we're going to do config.clock config. We are going to clone it because we're going to be using stuff out of here and doing things with it. And I'm going to call unwrap or default. And that, it's not called clock config, it's called just clock. All right, that will give us the clock config that they filled in. Or if they left this whole thing out, it'll give us the default one. And we still have some other options to worry about here, which is the fact that they could include the clock config and just omit some properties. So we took care of the fact that clock is optional with that unwrap or default. We are still going to need to take care of the fact that these individual properties may or may not be there. But we'll get to that. All right, so we got our clock config copied. So let's get the format out of there. So let's say we'll call this label format, and we'll set it equal to clock config dot format. Well, that's this format thing here. Okay. Now this we're going to want to. This is a option again, so we're going to need to do our unwrap or thing here. So what we're going to do is we're going to do this. We're going to call as dref. And the reason we are doing this is because as dref will take the option in place and it'll make a new option as it says there, coercing the contents. So then we are going to call unwrap or, and we're going to put a default format here. Now, I'm sure there's a better way to do this, and I'll work on that later. But right now, we did already put a default for when the whole thing is omitted. So I'm just going to take this same default here and put it over here. So this is duplication, and like I said, there's probably a way to avoid it. We won't worry about that too much. And then we do, so because this is just going to give us a string slice, we do need to convert that into a full owned string because we're going to be giving it to the label. So we're going to call toString on this as well. And there's our label format. And while we're at it, we're not going to use this yet, but let's go ahead and get the update interval out of there as well. So that's that other property about how often we're supposed to update. And that is just in clock config update interval milliseconds, and we're just going to do unwrap or on this. A little bit simpler because we will default to 1 second. So that's a little bit simpler. We're not dealing with strings and slices, so we don't have to do as much casting around. And that's it. We've got those two out of there. All right. And then we have our label made here. Well, let's replace that format here with the label format we got up there. And that is expecting a... Okay. The reason we're going to need this, oh, and it'll come up in a minute, but... All right. So with that done, now we are actually getting those two config properties out, and we're going to be formatting this time. It's still not going to update the time at all, but now it is getting the format out of the config and just falling back to that default. Now, since we do have it in the config, we should see something different than this. We shouldn't see year-month.day. We should see something reflecting this format. So if we run now, we'll see it's not year, month, day. Now it is showing Sunday, September 21st, and so on. So that is reflecting that format we had there. So that is Sunday is the day of the week is this %A, %B is the month, the 3-digit or 3-letter month, and then the day, comma, and this I is the time of day in a 12-hour format, and then the minutes, and then AM or PM. So let's go ahead and add seconds and run it. And now we can see it's showing the seconds now that we changed that config. And just to show that one more time, if I undo that, it won't be showing the seconds. So now it's just showing the minutes. Okay. So there, now we're showing the seconds. We're going to leave seconds there just like that, so that we can see if this thing is updating. And we can see that right now it is not, by the way. It says 19 seconds and it's not moving, which of course it is not because we didn't write any code to do that. So now let's work on this code that is going to update this thing. All right. All right, so right down here after we make the label, I do want to do one more thing here, which is we have a CSS class on the whole module. Let's put a CSS class just on the label, just to make it easier for people to style this thing. So we'll do label.set CSS classes, and that is an array. It's a reference to an array. And we're going to just set one called clock label. Okay, so now there's a clock label class. I could get there, you know, through just the clock module selector and then the label, but this will again make it easier for people to do that styling. All right, so now let's get to updating this every second. Now the trick here, how we do this is GTK4 in glib. There's a function called timeout add local full, and this is going to let us call some lambda every so many milliseconds. And the first argument it takes is going to be a duration. So we're going to do duration from millis. And so this is from milliseconds, and we did get that update interval, so we're just going to use that. So from the config, we're going to update however many they said in the config to update. The next argument is a priority, and here we're just going to pass priority default for how important it is for this callback to get called in a timely manner without being interrupted. This is not a very serious matter, so we're going to leave it at default. And then the last argument here is the lambda that we want to call. So I'm going to put move here because we are going to want to do that. And let's get these in. And that should do it. Okay. Now, let's fill in this lambda. Oh, we do need to import chrono.duration. Okay. From millis is not in there. Oh, sorry, wrong duration on that code action. We want std time duration. Okay. All right. So now let's do what we're going to do. We're going to run into a few issues here in this move. This is just Rust stuff, but we'll deal with them as they come up. All right. So we are going to call label.setText, and we're going to kind of set the text the same as we were doing before. So we're just going to take this out, and every however many milliseconds we're going to set the text to that. Okay. And then the reason we're getting this error is that it does want us to return this control flow thing. So at the end of our function, we need to call glib control flow continue, and this tells it that it should go ahead and keep running that. All right, so our lambda does need to be something that ends with this continue. Your other option here, so is break, which will cause it to stop the timer. So we're just going to do continue, because no matter what happens with setting the time, we want to keep setting the time every so many milliseconds. All right, so now the problem we're having is this label is getting moved. We can't pass the label to the callback because it is already owned up here. So we're going to just make a new label variable. We could call this, we're going to call this label clone and set it equal to label.clone. And then in the callback, we're going to use label clone. Okay. And now we should be all set. I believe here, actually, we could make this a little nicer. But before setting up the callback, we'll go ahead and just that one. We'll go ahead and do our append, so we'll put it into the module box. So this is all set up, and now we're actually done with labels. So we could just do this to shadow that variable declaration, and now everything's okay. It's the same code, it's just now we don't need to have that label clone name. We can just know that we've done everything we need to do with the label up front, and then we're going to clone it here just to use for the callback. So this is the copy that callback gets to keep. All right, and that should do it now. So now that we have done all of this stuff, this should take care of recalling that and updating it every second or whatever they have it configured to. So let's see, we got it every 500 milliseconds here is going to update with that nice little format. So let's see if that's working. Okay, and it seems to be, it's taken off every second. Now it's set to update every 500 milliseconds. It's probably good enough resolution that we're updating half of the interval that we're in half of the precision that we're showing. So this should be good. And that looks good, and that's our clock module. So, yeah, it does. It's pretty much as configurable as most, as I think Waybar has up here, which is you can just set a format, and you can style it, and we do have that you can set how many milliseconds between updates. You could add stuff to this if you wanted it to be more configurable, wanted some more options here. But this is basically the idea, and this was to show you how we're going to implement each of our modules one at a time. So almost all of them are going to end up having this kind of callback thing. Most of the stuff we're going to show up here needs to update periodically. Sometimes we'll use a timer for that. Sometimes we'll use possibly some other callback mechanism. But usually it's going to be a timer where we're going to pull something periodically and update what we're showing. So that's it for the clock module. And to review, what we did is we made a section for our module. We wrote out the config for our module. We made it optional. We made all of its properties optional so that we have a nice flexible config where people can define stuff or just rely on defaults. And we implemented default for it. So this is basically what we added here for getting our config done. And then this is what we did over here for getting it working. And then we put that config in. And that's going to be the process for implementing all these modules. They won't all be as easy to write as this mod clock stuff. But the difference is basically going to be the kind of stuff, mostly the stuff in this method here. Even if we use other methods, it'll all be kind of contained in this file. So for clock, it's clock, the corresponding module files for the rest. And that's pretty much where the variation is going to be, is what we put in the actual body of the module. And then, which options we put in the config. But hopefully that makes sense, and this is still pretty well organized. Our main module, we're just going to keep updating this config as we need. It's otherwise done. And then otherwise, we're just going to put code in here for all these modules until all of them work. And then we would have a fully working bar. I am probably going to keep going on this until the whole thing is done on video, but I'm going to see what kind of response this video gets. I know there's not too many people viewing at this point. I have done nothing to promote this channel, either on social media or with, YouTube has a thing where you can do some stuff to get your stuff promoted a little bit better. So I haven't done either of those things, so I am bearing that in mind when I'm trying to measure how interested people are in this stuff. But hopefully that was interesting and useful, how to build out one of these modules. If you're watching this video and trying to use this knowledge to do it in Python or some language that's easier than Rust, hopefully that still was helpful. Those ideas. I don't know who's watching these now or who's going to be watching them in the future, but yeah. All right, so with that done, that's going to be it for what we're going to do for new development here. I did want to talk about the next file that I added. So there is this flake file now, and if you are using Arch or whatever distro, you don't need to worry about this. Your stuff should just work, assuming it's been working for you so far. If you have all the GTK libraries and everything installed. But if you are in Nix, I made a flake so that you can, if you clone this, you can go ahead and clone it and type nix develop, and it'll get you in a development environment with all the tools and libraries and everything set up that you need. So just to go over that flake real quick, just what's included here. This is using Phoenix, which is how we take care of even if you don't have Rust installed in Nix, this will get you this will get the correct version of Rust with all of its tools kind of loaded up here. So it is set to use Rust complete. You can change that if you like to something else. Should work as long as whichever package you choose has Rust Analyzer, Clippy, and Rust format. So this just pulls in all of our Rust stuff. Well, it aliases all of our Rust stuff so that down here we can do it. And then down here in the build inputs, so these are all the things that are getting pulled into your development environment. I have Rust, which is, again, this is aliased. Rust Analyzer, Rust format, and Clippy. So by pulling those in, we'll get all the build tools that we need, and we'll get Rust Analyzer, which is the LSP. So if you have your Visual Studio Code or Vim set up to use Rust Analyzer, this will download it and make sure it's working. Same with the formatter, same with Clippy. The other neat thing about this is even if you have Rust installed on your system, by using this flake, you will get, while you're in this dev environment, we'll be using this copy of Rust. This is a complete tool chain, or if you change it to nightly or whatever. And then a couple other things I did here. I do have these two system-wide, but NixD and Alejandra are just the language server and formatter for Nix code. So those are just there for completeness. You probably already have them if you want them. And then this is the big trick here. If you're on Nix, this was a little bit annoying to figure out, but I got through it. This is everything you're going to need to include for your shared libraries so that all the GTK stuff we're doing will work. So for your build inputs, we do need package config, glib, GTK, GTK4 layer shell, GDK pixbuff, Cairo, and Pango. So those are all the packages being included there. So if you're, were you to clone this from GitHub, this would just, as soon as you type Nix develop, everything will be pulled in for you. If you're following along by making your own, then you'll want to do something similar to this. And then this is very important as well. We do need to set LD library path and use this lib make library path to build up this environment variable based on these packages. And then we need to do the same down here for this GI type lib path with just GTK4 layer shell and glib. And that'll make sure that your build works and that when you type cargo run, everything runs okay as well, so that Nix can load everything up for you. I am pretty sure that this is comprehensive for all you need. I have way too much stuff. Not in dev environments. I've made way too much stuff kind of installed globally on my system configs. I'm going to be trying to get that fixed up a little bit so that I rely more on development environments for languages and things like this. But it should be everything you need. So if you're on Nix and you clone and pull this down, you should be good to go. And I think, that's all I wanted to talk about, the flake thing. Just there is a flake and it'll work. Again, if you're not on NixOS, don't worry about any of that. Everything should just work for you without that. But if you're on NixOS, that's there. Channel-wise, I do plan on doing more videos on NixOS. Some more videos soon on my development environment and setup. And stay tuned. I will probably do some of those in between, and then we'll get back to writing more of these bar modules. Thanks for watching as always, and like and subscribe. Leave a comment below if you can. I like the few times I've gotten a couple comments on these videos. It's nice to hear from people and see that people are watching this. All right, we'll see you next time.